Okay, if you don't, just let me know. But if you do,
Yep.
I'll just go real quick. And I see again, I see people that took the last webinar, so I'll go real quick on that. If anybody wants me to stop and explain a bit more on the things that I explained on the other webinar, I can do it. But basically, I'll just explain what what we do here. So we've been in-country contractors or regional contractors for USARA for almost 20 years. We've assisted companies throughout the years doing inbound trade missions, outbound trade missions, developing promotions, helping, assisting you in getting contacts, and also guiding you through the process. And also just trying to avoid the research time or make you more efficient. That's what we aim to do. And basically, what we say is that we take you to the heart of Latin America, and it's not only speaking Spanish or just having been in one of the countries. It's understanding the nuances and the details that separate each country in Latin America. So I'll just go real quick. These are the services that we provide. We do market intelligence, trade servicing, consumer programs, trade marketing strategies, and public relations and communication. So if you put them all together, we consider that this is a go-to-market program. It's more than just a marketing. So again, real quick, we talked about this last week. We're talking about South America, the continent or the subcontinent, almost twice the size of the U.S., more people than the U.S. You see a big geographical extension and a big GDP. Now, what happens with this? One of the main characteristics of this subcontinent is that it's on the south hemisphere, so they counter season what we have in the U.S. So their spring is our fall, their summer is our winter, and that also applies to the crops that we have. So usually we have complementing seasons, and also they have biggest extension, and they have developed industries that can compete with the US, especially in markets that where logistics are similar. I see that we have dried fruit, so you can talk about Chile having a large dried fruit industry. Peru is developing and growing their dried fruit industry. Also, their fresh produce industry. You see more avocados from Peru. Grapes, actually, the grapes are flooding the market in Central America and Mexico. So you see growth in the agro industry in these countries, and you have differences. 12 countries and 3 territories. You have differences that we'll talk more on the human side than on the macroeconomics that we covered last year in general. So it's far. We're talking about 3.5 thousand miles going to Bogota, which is on the northern tip. 6,000 miles going to Sao Paulo, uh, and probably it's about 12 hours going to Santiago as well. So again, big region. These are the main cities that you will find in each country. This is also a centralized region, and you will see some similarities in Latin American countries. Usually, the capital will hold most of the wealth and the businesses. It doesn't really apply to Brazil, which is more like the U.S., where Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro will have more commercial and financial centers, mostly in Sao Paulo. But the political capital is Brasilia, which is a city developed specifically to hold the government itself. Santiago in Chile, Santiago, you see that well centralized, and again because of their geography and the form of the country, basically they're organized in regions, and Santiago is in the middle of it. So you'll see the largest population density there, and that's where most of the businesses are. Not the wine country, but basically the offices are there. Peru, similar to that. Again, Peru is a growing economy. We talked about it on the last seminar, and you can have it at the wusara.org website, where we talked about specifics of each country. Argentina, uh, again, a traditional industrial and agricultural country with common economic challenges. They've had that, for the last 20, 25 years, and they have better years than others, but basically they have these economical challenges, and they're still, figuring that out, especially with the new administration that has done some aggressive economical changes, hoping to offset the inflation mainly. We'll see how that goes. And Colombia, which is the closest to the US, it's one third of what you will see in Mexico. Also, it's centralized, but you will have other cities like Medellin, Cali, Barranquilla, and Cartagena that have their own economies. So that's a more, balanced country in general, with some challenges as well, but mostly in the infrastructure. But basically, these are the countries that we're covering. Uh, just real quick, so you can see the sizes of their participation in the economy of the region. Obviously, you see Brazil the largest, Chile, Peru, Argentina, and Colombia. But basically, we're focusing in four countries again for this seminar: Brazil, Chile, Peru, and Colombia. I will go real quick on this, but basically, moderate growth, less than the US, higher inflation. That higher inflation obviously affects interest rate and commercial terms, because the money that they will owe you will not have the same value now than in 30 days. So they can have a financial loss. So it's very, they have to make the money turn. So this is a big difference with the US, that the inflation is at 8.5 average. Again, financial volatility, and the production, the region is kind of protected, and their economies have tended to the protectionism, especially Brazil and Argentina. Uh, they are farther from the US. They know the products, and I'll talk about the perception of US products in this region, but they're farther than Mexico or even China, just the sea. So they have developed their own economies and their own products and their industries. You will see the largest uh, consumer products companies based there, and have been there for 100, 120 years. Again, I talked about this in the last seminar, just to give you context, trade barriers. They're specifically harsh on US agricultural products, specifically Brazil, some in Colombia, even though Colombia, they have a free trade agreement that is slowly turning into free trade, but you see some barriers that could be tariff or non-tariff barriers. Competition, as I said, you will at some point, especially in the commodity markets, you will compete with local sourced products or closer products. They may not have the quality or the consistency, but they're there, and because of the price difference, they can sort or they can get by with the quality. Currency fluctuations have been an issue for our Brazilian real, especially the Argentinian peso. And the Colombian peso had some impact in the last couple of years, but it's nothing to worry about. But again, that's something to consider when you're negotiating. Regulations and logistical challenges, which, by the way, these two will be common in each country. The regulations are hard to navigate. It's a more bureaucratic. These are more bureaucratic countries, not as in the U.S., but you will see a lot of bureaucracy to register products, to bring them into the country, and also in payment terms and in the banking systems. Again, Brazil can be complex on that. And the infrastructure, that they don't have the infrastructure that you have in the US. And most in all of the cases, you have to ship up the products by sea. So even though you have good ports like San Antonio in Chile or Cartagena in Colombia, uh, Valparaiso is the other one. Forgot the name of the other one in Colombia. But you will have those challenges where the frequencies or the efficiency of bringing the product to the final client can be tricky and can take more time. And this is relevant specifically in perishable goods, frozen goods, because as you know, time matters. So this is something that you need to consider. Again, we'll talk about these four countries real quick: Brazil, Colombia, Chile, and Peru. And again, this is a softer webinar than the ones that we've had before. Last one was more on macroeconomics, on retail, and on all the practices that happen on that. So this is more about people and how we can talk with these people. And again, how do you say it? I have to just give notice. This is a general overview. We have a time constraint, so obviously there are differences and there are specifics that we cannot cover in this time. So again, this is with the utmost respect to the culture of each country and to the business people that work there. But these are general practices that you will find or you will see. Now, what needs to happen to do business in South America? First is the cultural adaptation. Uh, Again, it's obvious, but the US is different than these countries. You will need more patience when doing business here. The time works differently in these countries, and while the business and the goal is set for the US exporters, in these countries in general, they favor networking, they favor the personal relationship. They will ask about families, which you do in the States, but they do it in a more organic manner. That is something that I've found, based in, and I have very good friends, and I think some of you are here, that we know about our families, but at some point that becomes kind of like a requisite, or like a point in initial conversation. How's the family? How are your kids? How many kids you have? Here's more organic. It takes more time, so they get to know you, and they need to know you. So that's why this patience and the networking are important. So I've had that question many times. I don't, how do I know the pace? Well, it's very hard. Sometimes they may not answer you for a couple of weeks. Just keep trying. But the the drive or the thrive that you may have in the US, just tone it down 2 points. That to dial back two, so you can have that pace, and again have patience. This will take time. Uh, some countries are known to have corrupt practices. That could be in the middle level government, especially in customs. Just avoid it at all costs, because that can cause you problems. That can cause problems to your importer, and that's something that we always, talk. Don't do it. And if it looks good, if it looks too good to be true, it's not. We had a call last week about a wine exporter where they had a prospect, actually from this region, and the prospect told them, give me a discount, and then I'll apply for a tax refund, and when I get that refund, I'll deposit it to you. So, long story short, we told them stay out of it. Just commercial practices are generic. So if there is something too good, and it makes a lot of there's a premium that you don't see anywhere else, just be careful, because that can be probably a scam. Understanding local regulations is important. Most of the times that is responsibility of the importer, but it is very important that you see that, and you go through them with your importer and their customs agent before you ship the product. This is because you want to be prepared, and if you need a free sale certificate or you need a phytosanitary certificate, you need to know that in advance. If there's a free trade agreement, certificate or compliance document that you need, just have it in advance, because otherwise you'll be running like crazy trying to get it in 1 day or two. So just make sure to make a mock import of your product, just on the phone. What do you need? What happens? This, and that. What happens when the boat arrives? What do you need? What are the steps? And the problem is not when the product comes in, is before. The main problem that we have seen in this region is having product registration and have it input into the system of X country. So product registration will take a long time, can take from 6 months to a year. But once that is done, then you should be okay to just send the product and have it imported. Language, we recommend that it's hard. This one is hard because in some countries you don't need to speak the language, but you may have an interpreter. And we have seen many U.S. exporters eager to speak in the destination country's language. Just understand that that even Spanish is very different between countries. So one a candy in one country will be a very bad word in other country. So just make sure that you know this little changes. There's a very good guide on CIA. I'll put it later, but actually the CIA, your CIA, they have a good company, a country profile, and they give you general information about each country. But it's good to have a local partner, and this local partner can be found through the agricultural trade offices or through the events that Busara can organize. Again, just be careful. Don't not all the money and not all the love, but make sure that they have a reputation as per references. And when it comes to money, be very, very careful, regardless of who is and what trust they may give you. And again, just try to adapt your product to the market. You may be the best-selling product in China. Doesn't matter. Here is a different thing, and you have to start over just as you did in other countries. So the reference saying, I've been to Taiwan, I've been to Europe, I've been to China. This is another region. Doesn't matter. So this is in general. So and again, probably I'll repeat some of them, but I'll talk about details that happen in each country. First, with Brazil, and the structure is the same for the four countries. So basically, the challenges in Brazil are bureaucracy and taxes. Those are the main ones that you will find. Registration takes time. There are, the taxation or the taxes coming into the country are hard to process. It takes time. If you will have it automatically in one country, here it will take time. So whenever you send product to Brazil, make sure that you understand those times. And if you have an efficient operation of just sending the product from the dock to the warehouse in 2 days, count double the time here in Brazil, because it will take more time. And that obviously will have to do with your costs. The taxes, make sure that you have all the taxes in place. There's a little list. I'll go through that. Again, corruption. They have done a lot of work on corruption, but you still see it. Uh, in the high levels, obviously, that has been on the news, but it still happens in the mid level. So again, stay away from it. Just make sure that you have documentation ready, and you have a partner that knows how to manage it without having to give the tip to the officer, because you never know what will happen later. Inflation has been relatively under control. They don't have a big issue with that. What they do have are import barriers, because they're a high, they're a large country. They have a good, they have a robust agro-industrial, you know, landscape, and in general, that's what they do. So they want to protect, and they don't have a free trade agreement with the U.S. So here you need more differentiated products, added value products, brand recognizable products that can be appealing to the Brazilians. Infrastructure as well. The ports. Santos is a well-developed port, but they're far from Long Beach or Galveston. So infrastructure could be challenging as well. So that comes into the 2 days that you need to consider for bringing the product. And from time to time, you get political instability. I think they had midterm elections this year. Not sure. I have to go back to that. But usually, the presidential elections can be tricky, and it's more the global markets and the buyers getting afraid of taking commitments or buying product from especially in dollars or in other currency. So that takes a bit, 3 or 4 months to go back to the same level. Just consider that. Now, what are the main taxes that are applied to products? First is the import tax. It's based on the import value. It's it roughly could be 20% from U.S. products, but depends on the category. There is also an ICMS, which is a value added. It's similar to VAT. It can be, I think it's 14%. Federal excise tax on certain products that could be more, that applies more to alcohol, and you will see similar taxes. Basically the sales tax that applies to the imports operation, not to the product itself. The import tax itself. So you have the import tax, you have the sales tax for all the operation, and some added taxes for specific products. You may have other federal, state, and municipal taxes, but again, that depends case to case. And the importer in all the cases in the region are responsible for those taxes. So make sure that you negotiate the Incoterm so you understand when the responsibility is transferred to your buyer. Obviously, we recommend that you do Ex Works most of the times, but if you can do DDP, which is delivered at their door with all taxes accounted for, well, that's something that you can consider and see. But you need a good freight forwarder that will do the process. Now, what are the main import barriers in Brazil? Again, phytosanitary and sanitary requirements. Just make the due diligence, have your importer make sure that they have all the documents, all the technical barriers referred to analysis certificates. Sometimes they ask them in Portuguese. Again, I didn't talk about it, but in Brazil they don't speak Spanish; they speak Portuguese. So the Agricultural Trade Office can help you with that. We talked about taxes, bureaucracy. In some commodities, they have quotas. In the big ones, the maize, corn, wheat, soy, and the taxes and payments. Again, make sure that you understand the taxes that can be hefty. And also, that's one of the discussions that usually don't happen at the beginning. How you get paid. Uh, to get paid, we have seen Brazilian companies, having an account in the US. So that's not strange, but just make a due diligence to understand and know where they're paying from and what is the relationship with the receiving company. So payments, again, is very important so you understand where the money is coming from and what relationship it has with your client and how will they manage it from the US or from Mexico too, or Colombia, going down to Brazil, how the finances of the company work. Now, in general, again, and this is something I learned many years ago, regardless of a culture, you need to understand, you need to differentiate good people from bad people. Uh, uh, bad person, and I was going to use another term, but a bad person is a bad person in any language. So just make sure that you identify that, and the people that I've known from the U.S. actually they're very sensitive about it. That myth that Americans or Latin Americans they're only based in relationship, that applies for everyone. And I've seen, again, most of the people that I know in the US do the same. So it's a trust business everywhere. But in Brazil, in general, the Brazilians emphasize networks and connections. So relationship is essential. Name dropping is good here. If you know the Agricultural Trade Office and your counterpart in Brazil is related to that, that helps. But again, they want to have this relationship and this network. If there is a trade association in Brazil that you can look into, also just explore it. Trade shows, we talked about one last seminar. I don't have the name here, but I'll make sure to send that to you. But again, this is network oriented, and Brazilians can come across as aggressive. So there's a joke that Brazil is the largest country in the world. They have the largest thing in the world, so they know that, so they can come as aggressive and assertive. And even for Americans, when they build trust, they can come as direct and sometimes aggressive. So just understand and try to make the differentiation between nice and business direct. And this is that basically, they tend to. It's a country where you will feel happy, close to the people, but also feel that that clash or that business stress or that business adrenaline that happens in the US. Moving on to Chile, it's a more stable country. The financing could be challenging, but it's more on the payment terms and on the payment systems. They are similar, but we've had that recently actually. In the US you use wire transfer, which I think is ABA system, and in Chile they use SWIFT. So it comes down to just make sure that the routing of the banks is correct, and usually it's just getting the banks all, having all the information from the banks. So it's not that they're paying or they have a problem with their system. The thing is that it's different from the US. So just make sure that you have that clear before the payment. Make a test run. Usually the transactions cost $25, but you can make a $25 deposit and pay $25 commission to make sure that you'll get paid before the transaction. Otherwise, you'll be going round and around. And at some point, it's not responsibility of the company. It's more of the banking systems not being completely coordinated. So make sure that you have that. Another challenge, as I talked about, is the market concentration. 80%. No, I'm not sure what's the percentage, but a lot of concentration in Santiago, in the Santiago metro area. There are other good cities and large cities, but the market is concentrated in Santiago. That makes that it can become saturated with the offering. So you may have competition that has been established there for years. They have a good drive through the industry. Uh, they bring dairy products from closer countries like Argentina and Chile. So again, if we're coming to Chile, we need to provide a differentiated product, a high quality product, or a high quality product that gives consistency. We got a trade lead from Chile asking for Monterey Jack cheese from the Western states. So it could come cheaper coming from Uruguay, but they wanted it from California. Why? Because the price and the quality, the value was better from California than coming from Uruguay. Bureaucracy, same thing. The sorry, the processes have to be understood beforehand. Natural disasters, they have earthquakes. It's nothing to worry about. Similar. I mean, I don't want to minimize because sometimes it can be a tragedy. They had one about 4 or 5 years ago. So these events can be, it can affect the overall, status quo, but it happens. But nothing that will collapse the market. But it's something obviously that has to be considered, especially if you hear that there's an earthquake in Chile and it was bad. Well, just expect that the market will slow down or stop for a couple of weeks. It happened in Ecuador. It has happened. Well, in Mexico didn't happen. It wasn't that hard, but it has happened. And as I mentioned before, you have competition, domestic, regional, European competition, and also some products coming from the States. Now, what taxes apply? Just the same added value, which is IVA, uh, similar to Peru that I'll talk in a bit. Ad valorem duties basically are the custom duties. There's a free trade agreement with Chile, and the specific duties that would come with the quantity, weight, or type of product. So alcoholic beverages can apply for that. But on the other side, you have a big domestic wine industry. So it can complement. There is opportunity, but understand that there's a big volume of wine being sold in that market. What other challenges could come? Well, local expertise. And as I said, Latin America, it's not a cookie cutter. I mean, we're not the same in Latin America. Even I mean, we like each other in general, but we can see the differences, and then sometimes we don't understand each other. And I have to say, I love Chileans and I have good friends from Chile, but they speak so fast that it's hard to understand them. Even, I mean, especially if the Spanish is your second language. Here they also they are based in relationship, but I'll talk about how they're results oriented. They have a high hierarchy in their society. It's a more traditional society, still male dominant, as the term. It's changing. You have again, it's modernizing, but you will see that respect for the elders and the structure, and they're more formal even when they dress. You will see them all wearing a sports coat, even for casual meetings. So that's something to consider. But again, they tend to be focused, efficient, and productive, but they're very nice. So it's not like the Brazilians. So they will be, okay, I get it, but I get it, but so they will push to get the results on the meeting, and basically they're straightforward and they're straight shooters, and again, very nice people. Colombia, moving forward to Colombia, and we have a quick Q&A set for the end of this. Colombia, I'd say they're in the middle. Bureaucracy and regulations are complex, especially when they change administrations. You have to deal with two main entities. One would be like the imports entity, and the other one is the FDA, which I think is called INVIMA in Colombia. But it's, the INVIMA, the FDA in Colombia, they will be complex in the documents that are required. They're getting better because there's a free trade agreement with the US. But also, you may have some issues there. They are changing their labeling regulations, and that's something that I didn't talk in the other countries. But Chile came up with a labeling regulation about 6 years ago, and basically they put black boxes in front of the products where they warned you of excess sugar, excess calories, excess fat, added calories. And depending on the product, you can have like five squares in the front of your product, and that was actually adapted at least with Mexico, and I know Colombia also has something similar. So labeling can be tricky, especially for added value products. Logistics, as I mentioned, they do too. They have good ports in the Pacific and the Atlantic, but the infrastructure going to the cities can be, is less than the. Yeah, they're improving, but they have some challenges, especially in the rain season, which could be in these months actually. Uh, the security is improving. You hear about Colombia, you've heard about Colombia. Security is improving, but there are some regions, especially in the southern part, that could be, again, challenging for, especially for freight. So the logistic has to be well planned, so you don't have any issues. The competition, it's there and it's increasing because they're in the middle of the American continent. So they're getting a lot of product from Brazil, they're getting product from Europe, they're getting product from the US and from Mexico too. So the big categories will be there, and they're evolving. They have a large retail chain called Éxito, which was currently purchased by a Guatemalan group. So there are some changes, but basically, Éxito is a Walmart in Colombia. The consumer preferences, they are one of the highest fruit consuming countries in the world. So they tend to go to the healthy side. They have a good diet. So in the cases that we do dried food or more healthy products and healthy snacks, there could be an opportunity, but also consider that they're closer to Peru and Chile, so they may have some products coming in. And the economic volatility right now is stable, but I talked about it in the last webinar. Obviously, pandemic affected, but before pandemic, they had some um, unrest, which now is more stable, but still, this is cyclical. But again, still, the country's in good conditions and good terms to do business with. Now, same taxes, import duties, IVA or value added tax, and depending on the product, could apply and also applies to to the alcohol. What we recommend in Colombia, just the same, just do strategic partnerships. There are big and good importing companies that they manage large groups. They may work for Conagra, or they may work for Simplot, or they may work for another big companies, but they are open to import differentiated products to complement their portfolio. So that could be one. Also talk to the Agricultural Trade Office in Bogota. Anna and Erica from Commerce are great. So they can help you with letting you know what trade shows are there, assisting you with contacts, letting you know what events are in the country. Also helping you with general information. I'll talk about the gain reports that I talked on the other webinar. It's repeated there. But here you need to have, just as in any Latin American country, a long-term perspective. It will not happen overnight, and you have to go back 2, 3, 4 times to the country or have that relationship with importers so you can develop that. If you have a contact with an importer, just share your trade show plan, because the importers usually go to the US as well. So if you're in produce and you go to the IFPA trade show in Atlanta, just make an appointment. If you are more in the added value, you can go to the trade show in Miami, the Latin America food show in September. I think it's still in September. Uh, Restaurants, NRA. So the thing with the countries, and more, I would talk more about Colombia and Mexico, is that the buyers go to these large trade shows in the US. So if you have a prospect, you can ask in advance, or if you're doing a domestic trade show, just reach out to the ATO and ask if there's any importer going there, because the ATOs, which are the agricultural trade offices in each country, usually they bring delegations to the large trade shows in the US. So we know that, for instance, for the National Restaurants Association trade show in Chicago, there were about 80 Latin American buyers brought in by USDA. So if you contact them, you can probably have meeting, and you can start having that relationship, and then keep working on that. And it's easier because you're exhibiting or going to the show anyway. Again, market research. Know the country. This is not the U.S. This is very different to the U.S. And please, it's Colombia with an O, not Colombia with a U. That's something that I've seen more times than I would have liked to. Uh, Now, here with a client, with a Colombian businessman, business person, they are positive, they are flexible, but that plays both ways, because this flexibility is crucial, but also for you, because they can tell you yes from the beginning and let's do it and let's see how we make it happen. But they can shift and, oh, let me just go, and it's like, squirrel, and they go somewhere else. So you need to be careful with the buyers again, because again, they're very professional, they're well educated, most of them are bilingual, but they're flexible. And again, they will be very accommodating, they will try to help as much as they can, they will truly become your friends. But you also need to make sure that how to manage it. It's like working with your brother. So it's again, just read the person and try to make it, make it happen. Finally, with Peru, uh, again, unstable politically, that's relative. It's a good country to do business with, but be mindful of the actual size of the market. Peru can look as a big market, but their middle class and their, the buying power segment of the population is smaller. And logistics into this country are not as easy as they may be with other with other countries. It's improving, especially in the logistical side. You're getting more routes, more ships going to Peru, because obviously the product is coming to the States. Uh, but yeah, just to study the market. And here you have to take into accountability what product is there and what product needs to be different. What difference you bring to the table. Um, as the others, labeling and import registration takes time, and logistics getting there. It's developed in general, but it's less developed than the other countries. And same taxes, sales tax, specific consumption, and the other taxes like customs clearance fees and other taxes. Uh, the US will apply mostly 20% of product bringing in. So it's an interesting market. We saw that Peru became fashionable or a popular market in 2017 and 18. Unfortunately, pandemic came and the companies were not able to follow up. So again, consider this market. We will try to bring buyers from Peru to the upcoming trade mission in December. We try to create a marketplace, and I'll talk about it in a bit. But again, just try to make it not easier but simpler. And what I say, easy is not the best option. Simple is the option, but sometimes takes more time. So what we're doing in December is trying to create a marketplace and bring more buyers from the region to one point, so you can have more meetings when you talk to them. Same here. I will not go into this. The distance is critical, but also they are working heavily on their country brand on Peru. And you see that, especially in the produce sector and also in the dry food. You see more product coming in. Um, I I still think that they have a long way to go with quality and consistency. But with some products like grapes and raisins, they are growing, and actually they're taking some markets, some by surprise. But they're growing, especially in the basic production. But also they're starting to have added value products coming into some markets in Latin America. Here, the same is more relationship oriented. Uh, and it's funny and strange, but Colombia and Peru, they usually feel underestimated as a country. So that's something that if you talk to a Peruvian, just ask about their country or try to get information about Peru and Colombia, because we had a buyer. He was the buying director of the largest retail from Colombia, and he met with a couple of U.S. growers. He came later and said, they don't have a clue where is Colombia, and they mentioned Colombia with a U. So just prepare the way so you're not in disadvantage. And basically, you come to the meeting and you have to be as prepared as your counterpart. And being in the US actually make you more visible. So most of these countries will have more information about the US than what the US will have about the other countries. So just make sure that you talk to them and you do it. Now, we've been talking about, what can you expect from other countries, but what do they expect from what's the perception? And I think you've seen that in other markets. They regard US as quality products. They think that the innovation, you lead on the innovation, and you lead other categories as organic, or other categories that come in. They consider US products as high priced, but this is a logical thing. Basically, they come from far, so it's a matter of cost per pound per mile from shipping from point A to point B. And if you add a 20% tariff, then can add to the price. But some segments will pay for that. They think in general that the US exporters have limited understanding of local tastes and culture. So that's why I reinforce you need to understand more. And that's the reason of this December's. There's noise. Uh, They regard them as not patients and focused on results rather than relationships. And this is tricky. They can be regarded as too formal and strict or too informal, coming in with jeans, coming in with this type of shirts. So basically, just make sure that you set the tone from the beginning with how you present yourself, how you act, and how you address them. So again, some of them take it, casual is nice, but there's a point where they can find it disrespectful. So just make sure that you set the tone right with them. Um, we talked about this last week, so I'll just finish off with, to have some context of what we're talking about. South America likes value for money. There are more online shoppers, but they use it as reference. Brick and mortar stores are still popular and very popular, but they, similar in all Latin American countries, they compare and they look for references and the product. So if you're selling or offering your product, make sure that you are available online, either through Instagram or your website. Uh, Sustainability concerns, it's growing. It's still not there. It's still not driving the industry. Eco-friendly products and packaging are still not driving the purchasing decision in this region, but it's slowly growing. They have local preference, so that's why we talk about having an authentic, quality-oriented, and differentiated product coming from the States. Those are the ones that will have better success. And a growing health and wellness trend that is, all around, but in South America in general tends to be, growing, especially Brazil and Colombia. So this is what we recommend. We talked about it last time: functional products with beneficial, ingredients, natural and organic. Again, with the warning that natural is still not as big as in the US, knowing that it's not big yet, it has not exploded yet, but it's something that it's up and coming. Um, Convenient and affordable products. They will prefer local source products in general, but some the differentiated ones will help them. And product with unique flavors that cater to a desire for exploitation and authenticity. Basically, it's differentiation. So here you see a couple of offerings that you have in those markets. The retailers, I talked about them in the last webinar. You can have them as reference in this one too. And the trade shows that we discussed: Chile in October, Alimentaria, Alimentec, AgroExpo, Expo Super, Alas, and also the uh, food show in Brazil that I have the name, but I forget again. We always tell you to go to the FAS and talk to these folks. They are very nice people and they're eager to assist you. They will probably give you general information. You can go to the websites and use the GAIN report, GAIN, which is Global Access Information Network. So you can have a company profile and you can have general information about each country. Sometimes they have contacts, but just don't try to get the contact list and drop emails and see what catches. Develop the relationship. I think is the main point in this one. Understand the market and develop the relationship. So that's my presentation. So